Reinvention is an opportunity to reimagine what's possible for your future. I get juiced about it because I'm like, oh, it's your opportunity. This is kind of what you've been waiting for. You've been on a path that's diminished you, that on the outside looks good, but on the inside has been eating you alive. And now you've come to this point. Yo, Chris, man, what are you doing? What are you up to?
I'm just helping people reinvent their lives. No big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. Well, I'm going to join it.
Cool.
God bless, we're breaking these runs. Life too short to play on speed run.
All right, Todd, welcome back to another very special fireside chat for Reinvention. What are we talking about today, my man?
Yeah, and for those of you listening to the podcast, we're doing another one. We're face to face, and we got a fire behind us.
Crackling, roaring fire behind us.
So check out our YouTube channel. It's great. But Chris, this episode is dedicated to the people who started down the path of reinventing their careers in some way. People who have taken their skills and begun mapping out some consulting or coaching work, or started exploring fractional opportunities, but who are still not 100% sure which future direction is the wisest, best move for them. And the idea for this episode came on the heels of a pretty juicy conversation in our community where one of our members put out his consulting shingle after getting laid off from a pretty damn successful 25-year career in medical device design, but then started getting hit up on LinkedIn for a variety of opportunities. And he's now finding himself a bit confused about what to do. Should he explore these opportunities? Is he all of a sudden interviewing again? What's the relationship between his new consulting offer and these emerging opportunities? And how can he make sure that he doesn't end up in a situation where he's burned out or let go within 12 months? Okay, so Chris, today's episode, in my opinion, is where the rubber meets the road for many reinventors. Situations get confusing when you're exploring new terrain, especially when you haven't had much experience in these new waters. So our goal with this episode is to provide you with a clear framework for how to assess all the opportunities that are emerging in your career right now, even unexpected opportunities, so that you can make really smart decisions to hit success and fulfillment faster. Chris, man, what do you think?
This is a big one. We talk about identity a lot in Reinvention. I think that this episode gets to the core of that, this conversation, because really at its root, Reinvention is creating a new identity, or maybe we can say revealing a true identity when you've been living under an identity or a persona for a certain amount of time that doesn't fit you anymore. And like we encountered in our community, not only with this one person, but with a few people we're talking to in the community, what happens is you're so used to being a certain way, living a certain way, that when you go out and try to build this new thing and do this new way of being and way of living, it's scary, it's different, it's unknown, you don't know where you're going. When something reaches back out from that old world and says, hey, you know, you could just get this job and you get this much money or whatever it is, it's very tempting because your nervous system really, I think, is tempted by that to say, that would be a lot less anxiety. That would be a lot less scary. You know, that's the pain we know. Let's get out of the fire and back into the frying pan, right? Some people might very well do that. But what we're here to take a stand for is that if you've got to this point where you are knowing that you need to reinvent and knowing that you can find fulfillment and happiness and abundance doing something different, you have to commit to that. And you have to commit to the process, and you have to commit to that not knowing what the outcome is going to be right now. And frankly, being aware of and avoiding, or at least managing, the siren song that's calling you back to crash on the rocks of the old career.
Yeah.
That was causing you all this pain. You're in this conversation, you're not taking it lightly. If you're in this conversation, if you're in the conversation about reinvention, you're ready.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also a really important time to just reiterate what our vision of reinvention is or can mean, which is this notion that your next career move or moves can be your best one if you're thinking about it in a way where you align the future version of yourself with your money making and what you're doing professionally, your lifestyle, what you really want to have happen, and not necessarily your past trajectory. And that's why I love this conversation that this came up in our community call, because I know from a lot of personal experience with people that I coached one-on-one and in our community that you are going to get tested.
Yeah.
When you're reinventing, you are going to get tested. And by the way, this is not necessarily, at least in my opinion, a call that once you start down a new path like this one gentleman did, that there isn't a world where going back to that old universe is not always a terrible thing. I don't think there's a one size fits all, but I think the conversation is important because when you're in this place right now, right, you're sitting in this crucible state of potentially reinventing your life and your career, and you're getting excited by listening to this podcast or people like us, and you're looking out into the future and you're like, yeah, I'm going to align my passions and my interests with, my money making, and that's really exciting. And I put out my shingle and I'm out there. And all of a sudden that old world starts coming back in. You're gonna get tempted. It's gonna happen for everybody. And so this conversation is about just staying the line about what this process is really about, right? Because at the end of the day, the call is to slow down and breathe and don't make rash decisions, because this is a moment to potentially make a change that will benefit your life over the long term. And so while that old world will come in, call in, we're just saying don't necessarily get all lost in that, because you might just stop and breathe and start making wise decisions. And we'll talk about how to do that.
I have a good story about one of my favorite people in the whole world, me. And I went through this, right? When I was in year 10 of this job that I was so done with since year 4 or whatever it was. And I actually got laid off from that role. I kind of may have sort of engineered that, but I hung my shingle out and I said, let me do some consulting, right? Let me see what this is. I didn't have the words for it, but I was starting my reinvention. I was actually quite a bit into it at that moment. Hung out my own shingle, got a consulting gig right away. Also started doing a little bit of mentoring, which eventually led to coaching. I started that all in earnest at the end of 2019. And then going into 2020, things changed. I ended up going back into corporate, and I went back into corporate because there was an opportunity that came up that I was a perfect fit for it, and it paid a lot more money than the last role, and there were lots of good things about it. But I went in with eyes open that I was like, I know this is not going to work for another 10 years for me. God forbid, the 25 years till retirement or whatever it was. But this is good when we talk about people who are at this moment in reinvention, to realize it's not one and done necessarily. It's not like, oh, flip a switch, now I'm gonna just create this whole new career and this whole new life, and I can never go back or I can never recombine it. There's so many different patterns and versions of this that you can do,
right,
where you can say, hey, I'm gonna shift to part-time and do a little bit of side consulting, or I'm gonna completely just hang my shingle and only go down that road. Like there's a million different iterations or a million different versions of it that could
And that's where it
exist.
gets confusing too, right? I mean, it reminds me of, like, I love Seinfeld, right? And he has a line in Seinfeld where he's like, breaking up with someone isn't just you break up with them. It's like knocking over a soda machine. You got to push it several times, and eventually there's enough momentum where you go like that, right? And it's true in a lot of ways when you're talking about changing anything in life, and especially when you're in a position where you've had a career for a long time and now you're looking at reinventing, and there's a lot of fear around that. And even when you get to a place where this gentleman has gotten to, which is a pretty high level of clarity, that his best version of his life going forward is to have his own consulting and fractional work. And he built a website, and he has a couple of other projects that really juice him up, that he's not sure about how it's going to make money, but he's building those. So he's smart, right? He's in this place where, all right, he's built out a shingle, and he can make some money doing that, or theoretically he can, like you did. And then he's got a couple passion projects that he's like kind of going to tend the flame. And obviously the hope is that some of those take off, and all of a sudden he's living this incredible holy grail lifestyle where he's like doing what he's really here to do, and it's making great money, and he's feeling really great around that. And then the old world comes in, and it starts saying, hey, I got this job for you, and here's what the salary will be, right? And he got on the call, and it was interesting how juicy it was for everybody, because everyone felt like, yeah, this is a moment in time to slow down and breathe. And I think what you're pointing to is this is the time to tactically start understanding how you can explore your reinvention in a way that works for you, and not make rash decisions based on what your old identity will feel comfortable with. That's the important thing. When we're talking about reinvention, we're talking about creating a new line of work, a new way of being in the world, one that has a lot of excitement and potential fulfillment associated with it. Let's stay there. Yeah. Let's not get lost in our old self that needs that security necessarily. I mean, you may go back to
It depends on your situation, right? I'm thinking of people on our call when we talked about this, and I know there's one or two who have that feeling of, hey, if the old identity came a-calling, it might be the best thing for me to go grab that. Right? And a lot of times this is driven by the financial reality of the situation or where somebody is. The hope for me, and what I think ultimately will be best for people in that mode, is that maybe it does make sense to go back. I went back in for a couple of years, but to go in eyes wide open and to stay open to the possibility of what's out there, and maybe to do similar to what I did, which is keep that work alive as a side hustle and keep exploring that. Yeah, I did. I did some coaching around the side. I mean, I did some volunteer mentoring that I did originally. Some of that turned into some paid coaching and consulting, right? So I kept it alive a little bit on the side. More important than even the work that was being done there, it was the concept. It was the dream didn't die because I said, well, I tried this for a little bit and then actually I'm going to hop back in. I think the thing is that it is circumstantial for different people that are at different phases. But at the point we're trying to get at is to be conscious and proactive in the way that you address it. And aware of that you can get pulled back in, and to say, we talk about creating like boundaries, to say, well, maybe my boundary is I'm not going to go back for a full-time job.
Well, here's what's interesting about it, right? So Chris and I, we think we're these great coaches and we're running this community. Meanwhile, when this person was sharing the situation, another member came in and gave the best coaching, right? Well, and she was like teaching this point. Because the question that he had was, am I all of a sudden interviewing again? And he felt weird about it because he had built up his coaching
He had just committed to building this stuff.
He has this thing, and now he's on an interview, but he's got this thing and he's trying to understand, well, am I trying to like sell this guy my coaching service, or are they trying to hire me? And so one of our other members, who's just a little bit further along in the reinvention process, said, you have the power. You have complete autonomy right now to create the situation that you want. He's like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, let's say that this company that's interesting to you, because one of the opportunities that came to him on LinkedIn was interesting to him.
Right.
He was actually somewhat excited about it in a way, which is good. It doesn't mean that you just cut yourself off from the world and I'm going to build my thing. That's not what we're talking about here. Our whole pitch is to remain open-minded and flexible, but it's how you have the conversation that was confusing to him. And she said, look, instead of he's interviewing you, think about it that you're interviewing him. And he just had this light bulb come on. It's like, I can do that? It's like, yes, you can do that. So he's liking what your resume says on LinkedIn and thinks that you're somebody of value that can help this new startup. But you're also in a position where you could say, this is what I am available for. This is what I would be available for, and be clear about what that is. And then she went ahead and gave her example. I get hit up all the time for people that want me on their projects or businesses. She was a VP of engineering, I think, or head of product for a big tech company. And she's like very clear that she may have 5 hours or she may have 10 hours, right? And once she gets clear on what her boundary is, she's now telling them what it is. And then they have to figure out, well, can we incorporate this person into what we're doing right now? And more often than not, she said, is that when you have that level of clarity, it creates a very easy situation for the other people to be like, oh, this is who they are and where they're at. And do we want to fit them in, right? And she's found a lot of success doing that, where she has 5 hour, 10 hour per week consulting clients while she's reinventing, but she has that clarity, right? Yeah. She knows the boundary. And I think that's what you were getting at.
Well, and I think it's a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's an important one, is this idea that the companies that are reaching out and they have a job description or whatever it is, the idea that like that's the offer and that's all it is. Again, favorite person in the world I like to talk about. Me, my first consulting gig was actually, the person was trying to hire me full time. That just wasn't going to work, like the structure of it, and I didn't want to do the job. I came back and I pitched a consulting gig. The good news is I knew about how much it would pay full time. And so then I was able to price something that made sense for everybody.
Right.
And that actually was a pretty easy deal to close. Right. So this idea that it's take it or leave it, I think it's really tapping into this identity fear that people have, of where it's like, you're out here and you're creating this new persona or identity, and it's scary and it's unknown and you don't know where it's going. And then that little hint of certainty is held out to you.
Right.
right? Oh, that's really solid. That's a job. It's got a job description. It's got this and that. Really, really tempting to just go cling to that. And what we're saying here, and what our friend and community member said, is that you don't necessarily have to take exactly what is offered. You do have the power to say, well, this is my version of what works for me. I think what you have to really be clear on what does work for you.
Right. That's
right. So that you have the backbone and the confidence to have that conversation, honestly, in a way to kind of stand up to yourself, to not just go jump to safety and security.
Well, I think that's what I did. The light bulb came on that I can do that. And now the second question is, what does work for me? That was the assignment. And then we said, okay, go figure that out. And when you come on our next call, let us know how much time are you open to doing consulting work for companies that come to you, that you are now interviewing if they come to you, right? As you are building out your own coaching consulting practice. He's like, that feels great.
Yeah.
You know, that's actually what I really want. And again, what I kept bringing him back to was the idea that a lot of people get really enticed by the security, but we also just have to be honest that the state of the world is changing so much right now. It's very possible that you could continue to get these jobs that within 6 months or 12 months, you're going to get let go again. Because I had a client who was a designer in Silicon Valley who kept wanting to go back to the well. And, you know, that industry is hard for designers in Silicon Valley right now, and kept getting jobs, but in 6 months, let go, to the point where he had to make a big shift and open up his own AI consulting and design business where he now has his own shingle, right? So you just got to be aware that that certainty that's being pitched to you isn't necessarily as solid as maybe it was 15, 20 years ago when the world was different, right? So this is why we keep talking about being open-minded, you know, and being flexible and learning a new way of being in the world where you can be your own boss and have these different opportunities and different ways to make money and see which ones want to go further as you move forward.
Yeah, and you can be okay if going back in for 6 month stints is what's working for you, that can be okay too. I think it's the consciousness about it, and it's the tactical approach to it, and it's protecting the boundaries of saying, hey, I might do this as a means to an end, but ultimately I know what I'm working towards. Specifically, part of the conversation that we had in our community was around the time allotment in your week to say, well, I'm going to set aside 10 hours for these, you know, creative ventures that are pulling me, even though I don't really know how I'm going to monetize them or even if I'm going to monetize them. But I'm going to protect them because that's something that's been undernourished for the 25 years of my career up to this point. So therefore, I'm only open to 25 or 30 hours of work a week. It doesn't mean that you can't take opportunities from the old world.
Right.
You just have to contextualize them, and this is a means to an end.
It's a new skill. It's actually a new skill that you need to develop. And I think what you just said is so important and what most reinventors don't do, but actually where the real juice is, of setting aside some amount of time for the creative projects. The ones that aren't directly related to replacing income or replacing purpose, but the ones where you just get lit up. And it could be things like the places that you volunteer at. We have a reinventor who works in tech, but he's really passionate about a certain sector of the world around clean energy, where he does a lot of personal work and volunteering for. And we were like gently coaching him, hey, maybe there's a world where you can find a job and a career using your incredibly advanced tech skills in that industry, right? And he couldn't see that at first, like that was even a possibility because, you know, his line of sight was so direct on what the jobs that he does. And then what was interesting was we pushed him on it and he said, yeah, there's 3 companies that I really love. And I've actually made some contacts and know people really high up that do that, like the CTO level. You know, I'm like, okay, start contacting them. And this light bulb went on, right? So this whole conversation is a call to be open-minded, right? And to explore these different opportunities and to create clarity by how you spend your time. That's what's really hard about this, I think, for a lot of folks is, you know, you're used to having a job where it's 30, 40, 50 hours a week and you get a paycheck. And now all of a sudden you're in a place where you're exploring fractional work. You're building out a website. Maybe you're doing some consulting. Now you're working on some creative projects. we want to say that this is the way for successful reinvention to happen. And it's a skill that you need to learn. And it goes by practice, right? And this is why we always say, look, follow this podcast along, join a community like ours, or get people on your side that can help you build these new skills, because it's not just automatic that you're going to be able to. And I think that the gentleman that we let off with got a lot of value by being on a call with a bunch of people and getting the feedback where he now saw it clearly in his mind. Oh, that's a skill I need to develop.
Right.
That's something that I need to do. And I think that's how you amplify your ability to succeed.
I think it really helps to have these things reflected back at you, because the truth is that he had been in our community for weeks and weeks talking about the new identity and the new direction that he's going, and super excited about it, right? With good reason. So then when this sort of siren song comes up, he's like, oh, should I go back? Honestly, Todd, let's be honest. We are great coaches. But but having this person in the community another person in the community say to him, kind of reflect back at him, the possibility that he could manage this in a different way and still honor where he's going. It's really powerful to kind of not have the coaches say it. We're saying this, and I think it's helpful to have the community around you that they're in it too,
right?
To support you, and also to have seen, in this case, 10 or 12 times, this guy's been talking about where he wants to go and the direction he wants to move. Exactly. And it's like, well, just sometimes you need to be reminded, hey, you're doing a thing here. You're committed to this thing. You don't really know how it's going to turn out, but you're pretty deeply committed to it.
And you know what's funny about this particular person, and this is going to resonate, I know, for a lot of people, because we talk a lot about get clarity, get that North Star, get that vision, get excited, right? Like, reinvention is an opportunity to reimagine what's possible for your future. That includes your money making, includes your career. Like, I get juiced about it because I'm like, oh, it's your opportunity. This is kind of what you've been waiting for. You've been on a path that's diminished you. You've been on a path that on the outside looks good, but on the inside has been eating you alive. And now you've come to this point and you can say, all right, what can I do in the future? And for this gentleman, it was really hard for him to get that vision.
Right.
It took him a year. I mean, like, it really took him a long time. And he would fight me because he was a one-on-one client, and he would like, I don't have a vision. I don't know. He was like been very adamant, you know, at the harder end of the spectrum, because most people can create that vision if they're prompted. But for him, it was really hard to envision an exciting life that had money and all this. But he got there. Okay. He got there. And then he created a couple of artifacts in the world, the website for his consulting, you know, another thing for his passion project, and a third thing. He was like, I see it. I see it. And then all of a sudden, that old world came calling in. And it literally like got him out of that state. It's like fascinating how he was taken out of it and then kind of had to come in like, what do I do? What do I do now, right? And so what I reminded him at the end of that call was, what's your vision? Like, let's go back to the idea that we always say, life is short. You might as well create one that is worthy, where there's no regret at the end of the day. What is your path with that in mind? With that clarity in mind, right? And I think that's what brought him back to a very sober and clear set of decisions that he needs to do.
I think it's actually a good experience in a way to have gone through all this work to figure out to get the clarity of vision and to what he's working towards. And then sort of just when he's starting to actualize it, the hydra that is LinkedIn like wheels up and comes and grabs him back. It's a good test, right? You're going to be tested throughout reinvention, right? A little bit of a test of how committed are you to this? And community is so important because at these beginning stages, when you sort of don't really have the external feedback that your clear plan is going to work, it's good to be encouraged by the people around you that are also going in it to say, hey, this really is what you want.
And by the way, let's also talk some truth here, is that the people who are in your personal life, could be your family, you know, the people that rely on you and that old identity, are not necessarily going to be the ones to fully support this potential big change and life shift. Like, they want to keep you in a very safe and comfortable place for them. You know, they also have fear and insecurity, and that's not a bad thing. We're not making
It's not malicious. It's actually their way of caring for you in a sense. We've talked about this in earlier episodes. They're not familiar with what you're doing and where you're going, and they're concerned for you in many cases because they're like, what is this person doing?
And they also don't know what your real internal state is like. right? They don't know most likely how bad it is, or maybe they do, I don't know, but they're concerned, but they don't know the truth, right? So when you're reinventing, it's tricky because, a lot of the people that you talk to most of the day, you're not comfortable really sharing. And that's why finding other people that are in the same boat, is so nourishing because they can give you feedback and recommendations about what to do that is very relevant because they're going through it or have gone through where you're at right now.
That's a great point. I'm so glad you brought that up because, again, this is something we've talked about, but it's like the people who are closest to you, they love you. That doesn't change, but they're going to have trouble understanding this phase of your life, right? And we have a whole other conversation we can have around communication and how you communicate to these people. But when other people who are in this phase with you, those people are much better at being able to reflect back to you where you're at and to give you that support and to give you that boost and also to hold you accountable when what you're saying does or doesn't make sense. I mean, that's the power of that community and being together with people who are going through it in their own way.
Yeah. I mean, look, there really is nothing like it. Our whole focus is to speak to people that are, let's say, 35 and up, for the most part, in the middle of their careers to some extent, have had some successes along the way from the external standpoint of things that look good, but are at the point either where just incredibly burned out, being shown the door or have already been shown the door, or just know that change is happening in industry because of AI or other reasons or politically, and, are at that point where it's like the path that you thought you were going to go on forever is not really a forever thing, right? And so it's scary, and it's scary for a lot of people. And like, that's why we talk about it, permission to be scared.
Permission to be scared.
Permission
I like
to
that.
be scared,
That's a good one.
It's like, it's okay, it's not easy. And so fine, let's turn to that. Like we've talked about on previous episodes, let's turn to that. And now let's start to make wise decisions. And when going in that the old world is just going to come at you, all right, that's good because now that's going to happen. And it's also with permission, you can go back into that old world like you did, right? Like you can totally go back in. There's nothing wrong with it, but your awareness is raised and you're still doing some other things because now whatever you choose to do right now is not a forever thing. It's always going to change. It's always going to shift. I think reinvention mimics the law of life, that the only thing that's constant is change. And I think what we're battling against is this cultural addiction to certainty, which is completely unrealistic.
Yeah.
And so now we're in a moment where we have to deal with that. And we just want to help, right? Like we want to help people through the process. It's a human thing. It's not a career thing.
Right. 100%. I mean, for me, all the difference in the world between just rolling along on the track I had been rolling along on and consciously making the decision to go back into a corporate track while holding these other things and continuing to nurture this concept that I was working towards, that was a huge difference. On paper and from the outside, it just looked like Chris had one job and then Chris had another job that looked kind of mostly exactly the same.
But it wasn't.
Internally, it was completely different.
Interesting.
And that's that consciousness that you're talking about, that awareness of saying, oh, I'm doing this for a reason and it's part of a bigger picture.
Right.
And I'm doing it with some perspective and awareness that this isn't going to be the next 20 years.
It's an evolution of your thinking, right? And look, we also don't say it enough, but I want to say it right now, like successfully fully reinventing your career, which is what you did. And you're sitting here doing this podcast, coaching a lot of people, very different than VP of procurement or whatever
whatever it is.
I still don't understand what you did.
You can't explain it. I can't explain it. It's so boring. I tried to explain it to Todd. He fell asleep.
It's like that Chandler Bing thing from Friends.
I do something in an office.
Something. He was working in an office. I mean, I never really did. So
Exactly.
like he did something like that. But it is possible. And there is a line of a future where you can be like Chris and others like him, where you do find this thing that you love and you're passionate about. And then you're going to find other people that could be business partners like me, or collaborators and a whole community of people that are doing that. And you can make really good money, even better than before, doing this new thing. Like we temper that down a little bit sometimes when we're having these conversations, because I think we want to make whatever's happening okay. But also at the end of the day, like I'm going to stand for people like taking a huge stand for themselves. What is possible for me going out there? Like what could I create? Could I make money being a children's book author or a gym owner, or something that is just more related, to
who you are.
To who you are. Yeah. And like, I'm going to stand for that. Look, I don't talk about it a lot, but I'll share right now at the end of this episode, there's a path in front of me. I married a French woman, right? And she's from France. I mean, we live in California together. And, at some point, our plan has always been to move back to France. And one of the things that really gets me is that, her father, when he retired, he was a cop or like in the military. He took over this family property that has been his family for a couple hundred years. It's France. A couple hundred years, like nothing.
Right.
But it's a farm property that's like almost 100 acres worth of land that when I first saw this, something about it was like, there's a larger thing for me here, right? And now as I've gotten older and we're 13 years into our marriage, like I started thinking about my reinvention at some point where I want to do something with that land. And there's like something I want to build there. Maybe a retreat center where I bring people into that part of France, which is epic, by the way, and we do some work on that property. And I don't know what it is yet, but like I have that. And having this frame of reinvention helps me because I know that I don't need to do that right now, but it's there and something that I can continue to develop in my own mind as things emerge.
Yeah. I love that concept because it just makes me think of there's so many people who are doing desk work who that would appeal to do some physical activity and
that's what I want to do.
Physical
We're going to
work
go out there,
over
man. We're going to go out there at summer camp. You come out, you do some work. We go for a nice coffee in these little ancient towns, cobblestone streets, I mean, it's 3 hours from Barcelona. I mean, there's a lot that you could do down there. There's a lot to see down there. Like, I have a vision. I get excited about it. You see that excitement is reinvention. And like, it doesn't mean I'm doing that now.
Holding that vision while doing different things in the meantime. That is what this is about, is being able to kind of add those layers to the possibility of your future life.
Life is short. Can I envision a life where that actually happens? Like, that's a good one for me, you know, and also helping people reinvent along the way. And it's almost like part of the thing, like God is reinvention, I mean, I just love the word. I say it like crazy, but man, this is so juicy. Just to kind of cap this episode off, the old world is going to come calling, no matter what you're doing in your reinvention. Know that going in. It's totally okay. It's totally okay to go back to the old world. It's totally okay to continue down new pathways. And our recommendation is to stay in the middle, right? Is to just have your awareness raised so that way you're constantly making good decisions about what you're doing. Conscious decisions, aware decisions. Like, this is the time not to be rash and like go back to that old job or like just fully go into that new thing necessarily. Reinvention, there's moments when you know what to do, right? There's moments when you get that, oh, I know I need to do that, go back or move forward. But bide your time. This is a moment to be mindful, to breathe, to get support, to hear others that are doing in this process, and you'll know when it's time to make a very clear decision along the way.
100%.
Not of this.
I think that's great. I think that's exactly right.
I love being here with you as always. This is always really juicy. And just continue to follow us along, subscribe to the podcast, and we can't wait to do more.
There's no fear in my chest.